Hey, Allison Verhalen here with AV Writing Services. Let me just make sure that we are recording, and we are in fact recording. Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. And today I want to talk to you about your About page. It is super important for showing up in online searches, and we'll talk a little bit later about how that factors into Google's algorithm and how Google uses that information to decide whether or not you are worth ranking, because Google is very protective of its reputation, and a lot of how it does that is by making sure that it is directing people only to quality content. If it is not directing people to quality content, then why use Google, right? Because as much as we talk about Google as being the search engine or the definition of SEO, there are other search engines out there. And if people don't like what they get with Google, they can try another search engine. You've got Bing, you've got Yahoo, you've got DuckDuckGo. They have other options they can try if they don't like the results they're getting from Google. So Google is trying really hard to make sure that it only directs people to quality content that really answers the questions that these people are asking when they type something into a search bar or use voice search. So this is all something to keep in mind. So by extension, we want to make sure that our content is high quality, because not only do we want to show up in Google, but if it's not high quality, even if we get people to our website, we're not going to necessarily convert them into customers if they don't like our content, if it doesn't answer the questions they're asking. So getting them to the website is just the first step. Then we have to convert them into customers, and that all goes back to your content. So your About page absolutely can be part of your Google strategy. And like I said, we'll get into that later. But it's also a big part of converting the people who find your website into customers. Maybe they are searching for someone who provides whatever product or service it is you provide, but they want to make sure that they can trust you. So they might go to your About page to find out a little bit more about you. Do you have a degree in whatever industry it is you're working in? Do you have awards that you've won? Do you have certificates relevant to whatever product or service it is you are providing? Anything you can provide to back up what you're doing and say, yeah, I really do know what I'm doing, that is going to be so instrumental in getting that KLT factor, right? The KLT factor is the know, like, and trust factor, right? It's the idea that people only work with people they know, like, and trust. And your About page is going to be huge in gaining that KLT factor, right? So first and foremost, show yourself. And I do mean yourself. Put up a picture of yourself, not a drawing, not a cartoon. They want a real live picture of what you really look like. Yes, you can play around with lighting and makeup and Photoshop and make yourself as appealing as you want to. That's great. But also keep in mind that you are your own worst critic. And especially we're seeing with millennials more and more, millennials want something that's real. So if your target market is millennials or younger, my generation and younger has kind of gotten away from the like perfect, like marvelous Mrs. Mabel kind of appearance, right? We don't necessarily want that. We want something that looks real because we can relate to that. And if we can relate to what you're showing us, then you're more likely to gain that KLT factor from us. We're more likely to get to know you, to like you, and to trust you. So always keep that in mind. You absolutely can use images and cartoons and drawings in addition to a photo if it makes sense for your brand. If you can find a way in that cartoon to demonstrate your personality, if you can do that in a cartoon or a drawing better than you can in a photo, then absolutely go for it. But that should be in addition to the photo, not instead of the photo. Even better than a photo is a video. Show yourself talking. It's a real life person. That way they know it's not a stock photo. They know that this is a real person who is talking about the issues and talking about their history. So I always like to think about your About page as like, if you're a superhero, your About page is your origin story, right? And if you can talk about that in content, that's great, in written content. But if you can tell that in a video, most people are much more likely to watch the video than they are to read the content. They're much more likely to engage with that, which means they'll stick around on your website and actually finish watching the video if it's a high quality video and if it's engaging. So keep all of that in mind, because again, how long they stick around on your website will also affect your ability to show up in relevant searches. So keep that in mind. So the next thing you want to decide is whether you're going to write in first person or third person. If the rest of your content is in third person, it might make more sense to make your about page also in the third person. On the other hand, this is your opportunity to introduce yourself to people as this is who I am as a person, as an individual. So in that case, it might make more sense to use the first person. Then again, if you have a team of people and you have your about page is introducing, has a bunch of sections and each section introduces one team member, then it might make more sense to use third person, because then you're being consistent throughout the content. The only thing that really matters is consistency. As far as the data goes, there is no, first person is better than third person or vice versa. I just mentioned this because I want to make sure you are consistent with it instead of starting to write in third person and then jumping to first person or vice versa. Just make that decision early on and keep it consistent. And if you do end up switching either between drafts or somewhere in the middle of the content, make sure you go back and revise and make sure that all of that content is consistent. And that's where it can really help to have someone else look over your work to make sure that it's consistent, because you might jump if you've missed one or two words that are in the wrong person, the wrong point of view, then you might skip over it, but someone else who's coming to your content fresh will be much more likely to see it. So we talked about this already, but I'm going to mention it again because it is super important. If you have credentials, if you have a degree, a certification, any awards that are relevant to the product services you're providing, then this is your chance to talk about it. Absolutely talk it up in your about page. You can provide links to the organization or institution or university that provided you with the degree or credentials or award or whatever. That can help boost your SEO, but it's not necessary, because remember, Google is crawling all of our content. So even just seeing that name pop up will let Google know what you're talking about. So that gives Google an idea of your credentials, which is super important when it comes to what we call the YMYL factor, or industries. YMYL stands for your money, your life, which means anytime you are talking about something that could impact the user's finances or their health, Google is going to be really rigorous about making sure you really know what you're talking about before it's going to rank you on the first page. So showing those credentials on your about page is super important for letting Google know, yes, I really do know what I'm talking about. I have these credentials. I'm not going to be misleading people when they come to my website by talking about something that, I read on some blog somewhere from someone who does not have the relevant credentials, or a friend told me, and who knows where they got their information from. So finances and health related things are just way too important to mess with, and Google is not going to risk that. So make sure that you have your credentials in order and that you talk about them. Again, especially if you're in financial planning or financial literacy, if you are talking about healthcare, if you're talking about nutrition or fitness, Google wants to see those credentials, and most likely your users are also going to want to see those credentials before they take that next step to becoming a buyer from you. That being said, while your credentials are great, get a little personal, because again, it's all about the KLT factor. And they're only going to get that if they get to know you as a person, as an individual. So feel free to talk about your interests, your hobbies, your pets. If you have kids, you can talk about your kids, but you have to be careful, because there's a fine line to walk between getting personal and getting too personal. And when I talk about being too personal, I mean not just grossing people out, because there is that. Like, you can make jokes about yourself that are a little self-deprecating, that's fine. But if you're talking about like a bowel movement that you had, maybe you think it's funny, maybe your audience will just get grossed out by it. They don't want to know that much about you. Also keep in mind that anything you publish online then becomes public property. It becomes public information. And you don't necessarily want all of your personal information out there. So never ever post your home address online, ever. Don't do it. It's a great way to get death threats in some cases, to get scams, to get goodness knows what else. So never ever put your home address up online. Just don't do it. If you have kids, maybe you want to talk about your kids, but maybe refrain from mentioning their names, refrain from posting pictures of them. You might even want to go so far as to refrain from mentioning their genders. That's a little extreme, but you can never be too careful online, right? So just practice caution when posting stuff online. So that's about it as far as that goes. Your birthday. If you want to celebrate your birthday with people, maybe be a little cagey about your age. If you're happy talking about your age, maybe be a little careful about your exact birth date. Because again, if people know the exact month, day, year that you were born, they can potentially use that information against you. Then they just need a little bit more information from you, and they can get all kinds of information that then they can use to steal your identity. So never ever reveal online the exact date you were born. Keep it short and sweet. So I've talked a lot about how, the average blog post that shows up in Google is around 1,750 words, give or take. That is for blog posts. That is not necessarily for your landing pages. Your landing pages, you want to keep between 400, 600 words, just long enough to keep Google happy, not long enough to bore your readers, right? People are likely to get really in depth and to read thousands of words about something that is solving a problem for them. They're less likely to spend as much time reading about you as an individual. Yes, they want to get to know you. They do not want to know your entire life story. So just keep that in mind. Next, have a call to action. And I know this might sound a little contradictory because we always talk about how your about page is not for selling. That's your sales page. Then again, it can also be a great opportunity to build a relationship with the reader. Again, they're going to your about page because they're interested in getting to know more about you. They want to build that KLT factor with you. So that is a great opportunity to continue building a relationship with your target audience. So it's a great opportunity not to sell to them, but maybe invite them to subscribe to your newsletter if they want to get more updates from you, to follow you on social media. In that case, you might want to lead them to your personal social media profiles if you're comfortable with that. Again, be careful what you're posting online. Not only do you want to be careful about scammers, but you also want to be careful about, do people really want to see pictures of you going out partying over the weekend, or do you want to maintain a professional image? So in some cases, maybe you don't want to lead them to your personal profile, or some people even have a personal profile that, even though it's personal, it really looks professional. And then they have like the secret profile where they talk about what they're really doing, but it doesn't outwardly have any link to them or their business. So again, you can handle that however you want. Just be wary and keep in mind what your people really want to know about. And along those same lines as politics, I know I'm super political on my social media accounts. I've gotten a little bit less political, but I do keep that to my personal social media accounts. I don't talk about it here. I don't talk about it on my blog. That said, I have seen companies talk about politics and it works out for them. So it's really, again, I say this every single time, it feels like, know your audience. If you know that in general, their political alignments are in line with yours, then absolutely go ahead and talk about that in your marketing content. If you know most of your audience does not agree with your political views, then maybe just keep quiet about it. Depending on your industry, it might be hard to not talk about it. So for example, if you're an attorney, then whatever legal decisions the current administration is making, the current Supreme Court is making, whatever precedent is being set in the various courts of the land, that can all affect your target audience and your readership, and it's going to affect what you do for your clients and for your business. So you can absolutely talk about that in your marketing content. If you want to, you can avoid taking a side. You can just lay out the facts of like, this is the decision that was made, or this law was put into effect, or this law was changed, and these are going to be the results. So you got to talk about it depending on your industry, but you can be careful about it. Same goes for religion. again, most people say to avoid religion because it can be super contentious, but I've also have a client who regularly talks religion when she's working with her clients, and it makes sense for her to put that in her marketing content because there is a subset of people who are very attracted to that. So again, it depends on you and your company and how you work with your clients. And it's all about knowing your clients. If you know that's something that's in line with their beliefs, great. If not, maybe avoid talking about it in your marketing content. So that's it. That's everything I have for your about page. So if you need more tips like this, absolutely feel free to reach out to my website at avwritingservices.com. If you have any questions and you want to reach out to me directly, you can do that at info@avwritingservices.com. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much. Have a great week and happy blogging.